Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're listening from. I'm Caroline Hill, editor of Legal IT Insider, and I'm pleased to be joined by Isabel Parker, former Chief Innovation Officer at Freshfields Brookhurst Sterling and now non-exec director at Panorama. Hi, Isabel.
Hello, Caroline. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
You are here largely because we just wanted you to be here, but also because, and we're grateful to have you, but because you've been nominated for the European Women of Legal Tech Awards, and we're here to celebrate that, to have a little bit of a look at your nomination, and also to talk about these types of women awards and whether that's a good thing, whether we need to single out women for women's sake, and have a little bit of a chat around that. So firstly, congratulations. So when did you find out? It was very recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, just got an email through, and I'm very sort of honoured to be nominated, and it's a great privilege to be nominated.
Yeah.
But I think the funny thing about these awards, in a way, is that I don't think anyone's going to be that interested in who wins them. Do you know what I mean? I think it's more about the fact of nominating itself, and the fact that it's given a platform to all these amazing women of all different ages from all different parts of Europe, who've all done very different things in the industry. And that in itself is more important, I think, than, who wins or loses.
I think, do you know what, it's so lovely to see all these women on LinkedIn, especially in an industry where, as we all know, there are not enough women. So it's fantastic to see, and I absolutely agree with you. So you, just to sort of give you the proper introduction, so you trained as a finance lawyer at Freshfields?
Yes, I did.
And then you moved from fee earning to delivering Freshfields Legal Solutions Hub in Manchester, Germany and Hong Kong. How did you make that transition?
Well, it's funny because I was just reflecting on this before this interview, and I thought, what was it like growing up as a fee earner back then in a Magic Circle law firm, which at the time, although now they have a female senior partner, well done Freshfields, at the time was extremely male dominated. I remember I got to sort of, about 5 or 6 years qualified, just looking around me and thinking, where did the senior women go? Where do they go? Because they all just seem to disappear. Really? There were one or two, partners, but very, very few female partners. And what was sort of not obvious to me at the time, to my shame really, was that behind the sort of advisory capability was this whole engine of business of law that was supporting the lawyers, made up of really exceptional female talent and leadership in HR, in finance, in marketing, which to many fee earners still today, I believe, is completely invisible to them. So when I made that transition after taking some time off to have my children, it was sort of a bit of an eye-opener, sort of a big equalizer. Suddenly the playing field seemed much more open. I was working with some great people like the head of our global centre in Manchester, Olivia Bolson, and other really great female leaders. And I'd never really had that community before. So so in a way, it was very equalizing, democratizing to be able to make that shift.
Okay. Do you think then we should talk a bit more about what you were doing, but just whilst you've raised that, do you think it's important? How important is it to have this kind of community then, and the support of other women? I was going to come on to say how important are these awards. Do you think that having a community of women helped you to progress your career?
I do. I do think it has helped, and it was certainly much easier to be surrounded by like-minded women who I could look up to and sort of who were role models for me. I would say though that it's not just the women. There's been plenty through my career. I'm not a technologist, is what I should say. I was a lawyer who moved into that space and who was able to translate a little bit between the needs of the lawyers and the language of the tech people. So I'm not a technologist, and most of the people who I was surrounded with in the tech space were still male, even though they were on the business services side of the law firm. But in general, there were lots of very, very good male allies and supporters out there who never, treated me as though I didn't know what I was talking about, who would support me, even though I didn't have the technical capability and language to sort of access that world. In particular, actually, at that time, which was about 2014, I suppose, some of the vendors that were coming through, the sort of the Kiras and actually and others in that space, I probably shouldn't call them out, had male CEOs who were really empathetic and helpful, and great allies to me personally. So although it was a male-dominated space, I never really felt at a disadvantage. I was sort of used to fighting for my position in the law firm, so it wasn't too hard a transition. But to have that network of people who sort of look like you, are your gender, and who support you is, of course, absolutely essential. And though it seems really cheesy, I'm sure all the sort of LinkedIn life looks really cheesy, it is genuine. I think people really do want to call out each other and support each other, and I always found that very, very helpful in my career.
So I think when I was thinking about what to ask you about this award, just about you and your career, I think that one of my questions is, should I be asking you about being? I feel like you've had some great achievements, and that as a person rather than as a woman. So, do you think that should I be asking you about your experiences of in your career as a woman, as a person? Is there a way, do you think, that we should approach this in order to be the most supportive? Which do you think is the right thing?
It's tricky, isn't it? And I feel like I might tie myself up in knots a bit with this. Because
well, I think it's an open and honest conversation.
Yeah.
I think we need more of it, don't we? I think,
okay.
I think from my, sorry to interrupt you, but so from my point of view, I think we need to be transparent about the fact that, these are sometimes tricky things, aren't they? And, you don't want to say, well done, you're a woman, but I'm sorry, carry on. You were saying.
No, I hope we don't get sort of trolled on Twitter, but, I do think it's important to call out the achievements of individual women, because in law, particularly, and in technology, particularly, we are underrepresented. And I think it's important to give a platform to underrepresented minorities in every space. I do sometimes feel a bit sorry for all the fantastic men who have helped me achieve what I've achieved, all my teammates at Freshfields and people I've worked with over the years, who are men, but also very, very great supporters and allies. So what do I say in answer to your question? I do think it's important to do it. I remember when I was the sort of best progress I made in my career, I think, at Freshfields, was when my boss was a female. Our chief digital and transformation officer, Charlotte Baldwin, came in from Pearson to join the team as a sort of very senior, very capable woman, and the support she gave me, both sort of professionally and personally, sort of radically changed the way I was able to achieve. And I don't think necessarily I could have had that same dynamic if she were a man. So there's certainly something to be said for that female to female connection. But let's not forget all the great guys out there who've helped as well. Is that a bit of a hedge in my bet?
I agree with you entirely. And actually, I've had similar experiences, obviously, as a woman in legal tech in a different capacity. So I remember having a really terrible day, and Dana Dennis Smith, who no doubt, I had coffee with her, and just like a weight's been lifted. It's just like talking to another woman who's a champion of women as well. I think it does make a big difference.
I agree.
So, okay, so I'm glad. Thank you for having that conversation, because I feel like we need some, to be honest about in our dialogue, and men and women. So, do you think? So, you spent. So, in terms of your career, I'm just going to summarize. So, you became chief. I think I got your title wrong. Actually, you were chief legal innovation officer and head of knowledge. You were at Freshfields. You were shaping the firm's digital transformation strategy, leading the development of client-facing digital products. You established Freshfields CX in Berlin, and you, during your tenure as CLIO, Freshfields was named the most innovative law firm in Europe 2019. I already said you now consult as part of Panorama to the legal industry. And then in terms of your contribution to tech, so under your Walt nomination, it says that you've spent 24 years constantly pushing the boundaries and driving change in the profession, so in the legal profession. So as a person, what do you think is required? What do you think is required to be an effective agent for change, do you think?
Resilience, because you're going to get knocked a lot of times, and often through my career, I felt like it's this Sisyphean task of rolling this rock up the hill, and just as you think you're getting somewhere, it'll come back on you. So you have to be very resilient. You can't take things personally. You have to be empathetic and see things from both sides. I'm not going to say that's a uniquely female characteristic, but in a way, I think it is, not uniquely, but it is something you might think of as a female characteristic. Really thinking about the needs of your sort of end client, your customer, the sort of sensitivities of the lawyers and the way they work, and the fact that they are under pressure and time constraints. It's not that they're not interested in innovation, because frankly, they're very, very busy people with a job to do. And to understand, the particularities and peculiarities of some people who work in the tech space, who have their own language entirely. So it's something to do with empathy as well as resilience, understanding, seeing all sides of the picture, and not having a massive ego. Actually, I think if you sort of put yourself at the center of it, you're always going to be disappointed. You've got to be doing it for the right outcomes, not for your own personal preferment, because that's a very important part of driving change, that sort of authenticity, I think. So what's that? Resilience, authenticity, empathy, energy. And you've got to have energy. And, I'm not getting any younger, and sometimes it's hard. And I sort of see when you look at the nominations for this award, and there are all these amazing young trailblazers sort of exploding onto the scene with all their energy. I love that, and I think it's really good to see that that's carrying on. So energy is another one. You have to have to drive change, and you've really got to believe it, because if you don't believe it, that it's important, you can't fake it. I genuinely want to see our industry digitally transformed. That's what I want to see, and I want to be in the best place to make that happen. So unless you have that, it's going to be a very thankless task, I would say.
I like that. That's fab. I think we're gonna write. We'll write something after this. We'll put those down. And then in terms of, so you've obviously tried to drive. You've been a big advocate for cloud, and lots of things that have been in the legal profession, like pushing that boulder uphill. Do you see? We can't really talk about COVID as being a positive thing. We'd have to be very careful about that. But given that we are where we are, do you see positive things coming out technologically speaking from COVID in terms of accelerating those kind of trends that you have been advocating for a long time?
Controversially, perhaps I'm going to say no, I don't. I think we are at risk in the legal industry of applauding ourselves for having basically switched to remote working, which I don't think is digital transformation. I think there is a lot still to do, and the fact that we can all use Microsoft Teams, although it is a great thing and a positive, is only the tip of the iceberg. Will it represent a fundamental mindset shift that will last when we're back into a hybrid model or back into the office? I have my doubts about that. I think we still have to be committed to the change. We have to be thinking about the full gamut of what drives digital transformation, which isn't just technology. It really is culture, business model, the way we approach our customers. Our clients are our customers in the legal industry. Until those things really do shift, all the remote working in the world is not going to change how we operate. So I'm a little bit skeptical on that, to be honest with you.
And then, but then I'm with you, and I'm I'm pleased you said that. In terms of cloud, though, do you see? I think there have been people have been forced to. If some of them were obviously on that path anyway, but they certainly either accelerated or they've been forced to go down the cloud route. So there are some ways where actually it's sort of achieving certain things which really should have been achieved before.
I think you're right, Caroline. That's definitely true, and I think that was starting actually before COVID hit us. You could see that certainly a lot of the financial services industry, which have been so resistant to move to cloud, were beginning to soften. Law firms as well. I know at Fresh Hills we've rolled out Office 365, for example, in the cloud. So that's a very, very big change. And where one goes, the other will follow. So I think it was already gaining traction. But yes, of course, the fact that people have seen that it can happen without, disaster on all sides and terrible security breaches has got to be a positive. Yes, that's for sure.
And all the partners using, whether it be Zoom or Teams or whatever, it's quite funny. It's something like conducting their business.
Then I worry though, because I think what's going to happen if this carries on, and God knows we all want it to end, but if it carries on really long term, unless people make a fundamental mindset shift, how are people going to be trained within law firms? Because speaking very frankly, I think there's always been a bit of a challenge, certainly in more traditional law firms, about actually training your people, focusing on that, because the job is so massive and people are so busy. Not that they don't care, but they just don't have time. Now that it's even at a remove, how are we going to make sure that that training is done effectively and that people feel included, and that it's not just the most confident people that are chosen for work or those that can push themselves forward, which is even more challenging to do over a video call than it is in person. So again, I hope that law firms are thinking carefully about that kind of digital training, and the fact that it's a new way of interacting. It's not just shifting your office, to your home in Gloucester. It's a different proposition altogether.
Yeah, no, really good point. So just lastly, I suppose. So, and this is coming back to the women point again, but I really do think this is important. So, what advice do you have for other women looking to make their mark in the sector?
I would say, because I feel I've really benefited from the network, but I think you only get back from the network if you put into it. So you do actually actively have to contribute, and that doesn't mean getting on all the panels and bigging yourself up. That's not what I mean. I mean, be kind, be supportive, donate your time, donate, your energies to other people who need it. Don't be sort of precious with your knowledge, because I think it's very important to share in that way. And if you do, the network will support you back. And I genuinely believe that, and I've seen it and really benefited from myself. So work your network. That's what I would say.
I know that. Well, look, we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if anybody listening in before, do you know what's the deadline? Something in October. It's on legaltechnology.com. I should have had that right in front of me. So go on to Women of Legal Technology European Awards, nominate, vote, and
just look at all the people. Fantastic.
Look at all the people. Yes.
And vote if you want to, or vote for many, because it's very inspiring to read. I would say.
We're grateful for you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks as well. Bye.
Bye-bye.